Welcome to Newsbreak, being brought to you by WeBelieveDigital.com, a broadcasting studio that's located right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the deep, deep South. It's critically important that we bring you news from the African American perspective on a lot of subjects that don't get covered by any other media. We go beyond the headlines and we dig into the stories and we talk to the families and the victims and those that have been falsely accused in many cases. So We Believe Digital. We're broadcasting on YouTube TV, on Roku TV, on Facebook, and our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com. It's critically important because all of Newsbreak and all of the other content that's being seen here is being archived at WeBelieveDigital.com so that you and your children and your relatives and generations to come are able to go and view these topics and discuss the events that were occurring in 2022. Now, as always, my co-host for Newsbreak is Chris Young. Chris, how are you?
Doing just fine, Mr. Garrett. Looking forward to getting right into it.
Well, let's do that. The hot subject in Jackson, Mississippi continues to be, and I know it's difficult to have to harp on this stuff, but it's critically important. The subject matters that just don't seem to go away is the garbage contract debacle.
Yes, sir.
That's in Jackson, Mississippi. Has Richards been paid yet?
Still not paid. They invoiced the city after their first 2 full months of work. So they invoiced the city in June, and the mayor put it on the claims docket, and the council elected to remove it from the claims docket with no action being taken, just take it off.
So then they didn't vote whether to pay the vendor or not.
They just removed it from the docket.
How long has Mr. Richards been picking up trash in Jackson, Mississippi without getting paid?
Well, we're just days away. We're less than a week away from him having been doing this now for 4 full months.
4 months.
Yes,
An African American firm that African Americans firms struggle to make payroll and to buy fuel and do all of the things necessary to operate a successful business. And yet this African American firm, who was the low bidder of the contract, the award for picking up garbage collections in Jackson, Mississippi, has been operating over 4 months without being paid a dime.
Right. And you talk about a good faith effort. I mean, where could you find that? Do you think Waste Management would operate for 4 months without getting a payment?
I hear talk in the street that Richards ought to bring all of the garbage back. Just bring it all back and put it back in Jackson.
Plop it on the lawn down there at City Hall.
That would be a good starting point, I imagine.
Which, I'm always reminded is a building that was originally built by slave labor. And now you got 5 out of 7 council members are African American, and they make decisions against African Americans. I don't, Mr. Garrett, I'm not black, but I don't get it. I just don't get it.
You're not blind either.
No, I'm not blind.
You're not black, but you're not blind.
I don't know how you make sense out of that.
You can. And so, Senator John Horn once said that African American elected officials now are out white folk and the white folk. Meaning that things stay the way they were before we had elected officials, black elected officials being put in office.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that Jackson has a mayor and a 7-member council.
Yes, sir.
And of that 7-member council, I'm told that 5 are black and 2 are white.
That's correct.
Well, how is it possible that you elect a white conservative Republican as president of the council?
Yeah, it's just baffling in a city 85% black, and obviously the Democratic moniker goes along with that. That they could do that. They did it twice with one of the white people on the council, a lady by the name of Virgie Lindsay, and so it's what would that be? 3 years ago, they elected her to be the leader, the president for 1 year. Then Aaron Banks came in for 1 year, and then they reelected Virgie Lindsay for a second term as president this last year. And now they've turned around and elected the other white person on the city council, Ashby Foote. It clearly, well, I mean, I just don't see anything that he's up to that embraces African Americans, and yet African Americans elected him to be the president of the council.
He's the only Republican conservative person on the council, I believe.
I'm not positive what Virgie Lindsay's politics are, but
well, her ward is predominantly black.
Yeah.
And so I would suspect that she flies under the Democratic moniker.
I would think so too. And I live in her ward, just a couple of 100 yards into her ward there.
I'm told that she voted for Richards to have the contract and then voted against him being paid for the services he performed.
Well, she voted for it one time. She voted against it another. Remember, there was a bunch of revotes, and she voted against it another time, and then she came back around. And then when it came time for that, paying the invoice, she was sitting in the president's chair at the time and just said that we're going to remove that from the agenda. Period.
Well, we're going to move on to another subject, but this is one that we're going to deal with and continue to talk about in the days to come, because there's something tremendously wrong in a city that's 85% black, mm-hmm. and have a black vendor as low bidder saving $1.2 million a year, mm-hmm. and an African-American dominated council mm-hmm. votes not to award the contract and votes not to pay the vendor.
Yes, sir.
Is something really wrong with that.
And we talk about it so often and everything, but I caught myself the other day. I keep forgetting to mention the word taxpayer. When this $1.2 million a year, that money is in the city coffers as a result of our people being taxed. So that's taxpayer money that they would be saving. Now, how do you look the taxpayer in the eye and give them a plausible justification for voting against that savings?
So, Chris, you remind me of an event where our governor voted not to accept the expansion of Medicaid in the state of Mississippi.
Repeatedly.
And what were the numbers again? Now, what would the state have saved?
Well, especially now, when we have these rescue plan funds going on, especially now, Mr. Garrett, it's just the basic Medicaid would be a return of 3.64 or 3.46, $3.46.
I believe that's on the welfare reform state. I believe you had previously told me that's $5.
There's another piece there that
okay.
It's much more. I'm sorry,
okay.
I don't have it in front of me.
Right.
But yeah, they have no interest in, at the legislative level, predominantly conservative. They do not like poor people, Mr. Garrett. To them, apparently, the attitude is, if you're poor, that's your problem, and they don't do anything to help the poor.
How could you reside in the poorest state in the nation and not like poor people?
Well, it baffles me, but apparently, Mr. Garrett, it doesn't baffle them whatsoever. They refuse Medicaid, and they let new mothers die in Mississippi every single year for lack of insurance. They cut when the baby is born, the baby going to be covered, but when the baby is born, the mother's got 60 days. The clock starts 60 days, and after 60 days, she's on her own.
Wow.
No longer any insurance. And women dying every single year, and you know the color of the majority of those women, I bet.
It's unfortunate. Mississippi has an African-American population of greater than 40%. Mm-hmm. And so most of the poverty resides in the 2nd Congressional District, and mm-hmm. We have the poorest health in the nation. Infant mortality is the highest in the nation. Mm-hmm. And our governor of the state of Mississippi refuses to expand Medicaid, and for every dollar that Mississippi would spend, they would get a return of $5 and something back to the state. And this governor and this legislature and this Senate refused to expand Medicaid. It reminds me of the great fight we had being the last state to remove the Confederate flag. Mm-hmm. Mississippi just remains last and backwards in so many ways, Chris. Mm-hmm. And I live here, and I'm proud to be in Mississippi, but I'm not proud of Mississippi and what it's doing.
And you know, just last week, Mr. Garrett, I think you were out that day. But the CNBC channel, you know, the news, the business channel CNBC does an annual ranking.
Yeah.
And you know where I'm going already here.
Yeah,
but,
I do.
You know, and they say that Mississippi, from a business competitive survey, they say that Mississippi is absolutely the worst.
The worst.
50th. And you know what they cite? Well, and I'm sure you have more insight on this than I do, but they say on the positive side, yes, the cost of living is lower in Mississippi, but they say the workers are not moving to the state, and the workforce itself that's left here is the least educated and least productive of any state in the country.
Wow. We're getting ready to go to a station break. You're watching News Break from WeBelieveDigital.com. You can call in at 800-492-5186. We're broadcasting live. You can see us on YouTube TV, on Facebook, on Roku TV, and our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com, where all of these shows and other shows will be archived for eternity so that those that have interest can go back and review what was happening in 2022 in Mississippi. It's critically important. Just think how valuable it would be if we could go back and see what was happening in 1822. If we had the records, if we had the ability to see what the struggle was about and who was taking the fight and who was not taking the fight. You know, recently our governor in the state of Mississippi said that his proudest moment was the day that the Roe versus Wade ruling from the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. And that lawsuit, the essence of that lawsuit emanated from right here in Mississippi on a lawsuit filed by the state health officer, Dobbs, against an abortion clinic. And ultimately, the Supreme Court overturned the rule, and Mississippi led the fight in getting that done. And that's his proudest moment. It's a bad moment for me. We'll be right back.
Socrates Garrett ENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. Socrates Garrett ENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. By using Socrates Garrett ENT.com's crushed concrete products, anyone from homeowners to general contractors can help reduce landfilled concrete waste, conserve natural resources, and gain significant economic savings on materials and disposal costs. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
The Mississippi Link is an African-American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 601-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippiLink.com and click on Home Delivery.
Welcome back to We Believe News Break. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Our call-in number is 800-492-5186. You can find us on Roku TV, on YouTube, on Facebook, and our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com. I want to give a shout out to my sister Ethel, that's been visiting with me now since Thursday from Sacramento, California. We had our family reunion, and she is the matriarch of our family. And I just want her to know how good and how happy I am to have spent this past few days with her. We love you dearly. Chris, I want to get back into when our governor said this was his proudest moment.
Yes, sir.
Why would he say that? What is he proud of?
Yeah, that they want to claim. He wants to claim, and the Attorney General Lynn Fitch want to claim a culture of life in Mississippi. So the idea of not performing any abortions, so they want to call that a culture of life. So life is held in the highest regard, and yet, didn't I just mention a few minutes ago that every year women die, predominantly black women in Mississippi die for lack of health insurance after they give birth, and there's 233,000 people. There was a study released, which sadly I have on a separate sheet here, but 200 and it wouldn't cost Mississippi a dime for six straight years now, because we have these rescue plan funds and all that, for Mississippi to expand Medicaid. 233,000 Mississippians would immediately have access to full health insurance, and it wouldn't cost the state a dime for the first 6 years. And then after that, it would only cost them 10%.
Wow.
And they refuse to do it.
They refuse to do that.
They hate poor people.
And at the same time, you're speaking of poor people, at the same time, there was some misuse of the TANF funds.
Oh, yeah.
And so what was that all about?
Well, they turned this fund, temporary assistance for needy families. The poorest families are the only ones that could be eligible for this. And the federal government, federal taxpayers, if you will, give all states a certain, based on a percentage, every year, give them millions of dollars to make sure there's a safety net for the very least among us. And these guys over there at the Capitol now, I'm not sure exactly which ones, but we certainly know that the last governor is involved to some degree, and the former DHS head that he appointed directed these funds. They turned these sacred funds from the federal government, they turned it into their personal slush fund. And it's just no basic human regard whatsoever for people that are less than, or people that are poor, or, of course, people that are black also.
I think this scandal involved probably the largest scandal in the history of Mississippi.
$77 million.
$77 million.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Misappropriated from TANF funds.
And that money was supposed to go to an estimate now of about roughly 535,000 people.
Well, Chris, help me understand. Mississippi boasts that they have the smallest number of people on welfare of any other state. How can that be in the poorest state?
They go out of their way. They just want to do this whole. Remember that whole pick them up by the bootstraps?
Yeah.
They want to do that. Pick yourself up and get out there and get a job kind of thing, not realizing that some people don't have bootstraps because they don't even have boots. But they don't care about that, and it's just I don't know how you defend it. And the other thing that of course annoys me is that these guys tell you right off the bat when you meet them that which church they belong to, and so they're all walking around Christians that are hating on the least of these.
Wow.
Now, how does that add up?
Wow, that's not very Jesus-like, is it?
Not very Jesus-like.
Well, Chris, we need to switch gears a bit and cover a couple more subjects. Crime in Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson has the distinction of being the number one murder capital of the world, which is a dubious task to have. When I recall when we didn't even lock our doors in Jackson, Mississippi. Right. What was the latest crime spree like in Jackson?
Well, it's got to be at 80 by now. Just yesterday, just down the road from here, a gentleman had a gun, and somebody called the police, and they responded and told the man to put the gun down, but he didn't put the gun down, and then he turned toward the police, and they took him out. There's been several shootings and several murders just over the last week. It seemed like things were I was being, trying to be cautiously optimistic for a while there, because it seemed to kind of be dying down a little bit. But over this last week, it went right back up again.
Wow. And I associate high crime with poverty. Do you think there's any correlation?
I do, and I get a little bewildered when I see elected officials dispute that. I don't know how you don't. I don't know how they've obviously never been poor, or they've never obviously been desperate. Poverty breeds desperation. You're talking to people who are trying to live. They're trying to survive, and the things are stacked against them at that point. And so the idea that that would not dovetail into crime, to me, it's just a no-brainer.
It's hard to believe. And one of the things that we think that also creates the environment for crime is that the fathers have been moved out of the homes. And Chris, many people don't recognize that this was a planned event, that after the riots in Watts, that J. Edgar Hoover decided that the black male had to be controlled and had to be displaced. And so policies were created that said that the black female could not receive any substance, any benefits from TANF or any CHIP and all of those other things if the male was in the house. And yet today, still today, in public housing, black females cannot get public housing if there is a male in the house.
Unmarried male.
Unmarried male in the house.
Yeah.
And Chris, what that has done is that has turned young boys into very aggressive individuals that are angry, that really have no direction and guidance on how to handle anger.
Right.
And so I see 9 and 10-year-old boys walking the streets with their pants below their knees with AK-47s and Uzis and things of that nature. Because there's no male around.
No guidance.
No guidance.
No security.
And Mississippi then also, on top of that, has the highest number of imprisoned personnel anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
We lock up more of our people, and 90% of the prison population look like me, Chris.
Right.
Looks like me.
Right.
And so you displace the father, you cut off the funds from TANF, you deny Medicaid expansion.
You lock up the daddy.
You lock up the daddy.
No revenue coming there.
And what do you get, Chris?
Desperation.
Desperation.
Yeah.
And desperation breeds crime, because a hungry man will hurt you, he will steal, and he will kill. A man who has no value for his life and no self-esteem for his life does not have any for yours. So Jackson's crime is something that we're going to talk about because it's out of control. And we got to have policies and leadership to affect change. Now, Chris, the word leadership is critically important. How are we going to get the kind of leadership that we need to turn this around?
Well, I mean, at what level are you going to start at? I'm working on an article right now for the Mississippi Link, several series. And, what I'm trying to do, Mr. Garrett, because I finally was able to, find the right word that resonates, is that if you don't, you can't lead people that you don't embrace. You're not an effective leader if you don't embrace the people that you're supposedly leading. If you don't care about them, if you don't show some form of compassion for them, if you don't listen to what they have to share with you, listen to their concerns, et cetera, et cetera. That whole concept about, if you're elected governor of a state, you're the governor for the entire state, not just the people that voted for you. So it's a real predicament, not only at the state level, but at the county and at the city level too. I mean, I just I don't know what we could do to motivate people to develop that attitude of being a servant leader, of realizing that, no, this ain't about me. This is about me serving you. That's the whole concept, and we don't have that here.
Well, we're going to have to get it. Either we're going to import leadership or we're going to grow leadership, but we certainly are going to have to develop it. Now, I did recall you mentioned that the mayor made a comment, something about if 85% of your population was left-handed.
Yeah. You better come up with some left-handed jobs.
If 85% of your population is left-handed, you better come up with some left-handed jobs.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the smartest thing I've heard the mayor say. That's acknowledging that you understand where you are.
That's right.
And that you acknowledge that you need to create opportunity for that population that sent you down there.
And we're still not seeing any results of that. We're seeing some results, some ordinances, crime-related, but we're not seeing anything that's getting work, contracts into more hands of black businesses in this city.
Well, Chris, we're out of time for today, but this has been News Break brought to you by WeBelieveDigital.com. Check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, on Roku, and on WeBelieveDigital.com. Until tomorrow, have a great day and stay safe.